Good morning, Gen Rinpoche. Tashidale. Good morning, Gen.
Oh yeah, also.
And good morning, Katrina.
Good
And
morning.
welcome to people online. The preliminary prayers, the link for the preliminary prayers is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, no other world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offering and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner and the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop into a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, Portland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kapniriyatmai. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
나 닉송 겐라.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that. Oh, Micho doa kalu churjaba. Kunjur chiwa chuba, tushin shi. Wambo shishi, nirshi shila, ke nyayi shukba delo cha cha lo. Oh yeah, tak. Angwa do sukulung chuya de namjuna shi chikbar shirwa. Oh, karso ure. Sede rindu mineba, jigbe chujen chi sonda. Kiwa chima mewa mare, kiwa chima chindrogu. Yende kiwa chima ngay songi kiwa. Kele kewe makiwa chi lada mii kiwa chi langne. Yende tsendili ya jimba tsudin soba samdele soba li changbati. Kone kondo peye tenchi liya. Yende lada mii tenka rushi li kiwa chakuyo sam. Oti ye chedu teda kewe kyu. Simjian shen la lunga yusum yi kone simjian shen la tsuwa pang. Jinu ji pemba truba shudi chakuyo samne. O kulung chik seta warwa. Oti yang ta lada mii kiwa ti yang. Ngay ji rangshi chen yin, song ngendul todi kiawa sangpo yin na yang chiri tu ngay ji rangshi chen. Mila ya kiawa na chila sokpa rwa. Ala ya tu ngay lama ila tu. Tama leda nyamu be shangwa chen yin du. Rangla rangwa me ba ki chen ni dor ku ba chen be. Oya tu ngay le tendo tarwa chi che gu yo sam. Ibu dengi samli ki go ra. Tani ti rang chi bu koya tu ngay le tawra sam ki dik ma re sam. Sose chen di pama nyen rege tsobe. Simje tezu thoma meba na tanda pada tunga je nar mao bana tus tenge telia. Samlo matang chi ranchi bu thare samlo tanda rung mare samne. Wa. Inde tse di pama tsobe. Choha nga mati nga mala soba. Pama nyen de la soba. Simje kande chi na rangi nyen de tang. Wa. Rangla pen doba ma juwa mebe. Samne tende samlo tanda. Teda tamje tunga de chawa ya chetu ba chi che kuyo sam. Diya kar sura. Rānda rāwa nye nye tu kyurbata mācchūpa kāya rōng. Rānda rāwa tewa ndewa tūngai mendoba shechi yinbe. Rāngi tūngai se kubata tewa tūkuba shendu shenji tūngai se wata. Tewa tūpa la ya rāngi bē tūmke. Simshe kandichi yinā tezula pēn tō tūmke ge. Pēn kuse yunden kundi ji kibushi kiwa chāsam. Yechi tu sanje ji koba tō sam tārimbu samluta, lo chachimbu samluta. O te che to tende rim ji lo be tondalia. Lo tsenge tene che to sanje sumbade. Yangi yin samne kuno se tamne sembar shus ya.
So here, as per usual, before we start the teachings, we should set our motivation, set our intention. And so we should think that here, this life that we have right now is something that is subject to destruction. And we don't just become nothing after this life, but we have to take a rebirth. So thinking about this, thinking about the kind of contemplation for the being of small capacity, we recognize that we have to take a rebirth in the future, and we want to avoid the kind of suffering rebirth. And instead take a birth as a human or a god, wherein we have the kind of basis to be able to develop and continue our practices of generosity and ethics and patience and meditative concentration and so forth. And so for that purpose, to be able to get that kind of birth, we're going to abandon any kind of harm toward other sentient beings by our three doors, our body, speech, and mind. And as much as we are able, try to help other sentient beings. So taking up those practices for that purpose is the being of small capacities kind of intention. But thinking beyond that, we recognize that even if we take a birth as a human or a god, it's still in the nature of suffering. It's better in comparison to the lower realms, but we still are subject to the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and having to cast off our aggregates and take rebirth without any kind of control. And so at this point, developing the kind of attitude of a being of middling capacity, We generate the desire to gain a definite freedom from that cycle of suffering, of samsara. But when we get to that point, thinking then that to just strive after our own liberation alone is really not okay. Looking at the kind of beings like the mothers and fathers, those beings that we love in this life, to leave them in that kind of suffering situation and just strive after our own freedom is not suitable. And not only are there those that have been kind to us and loving towards us in this life, when we think about past lives and the lives before that, there's not a single being who hasn't acted toward us with kindness and love. And so, in that way, we think, I need to get all of these suffering sentient beings out of that kind of cycle of suffering. And recognizing, too, that every being is just like us in wanting to have happiness and not wanting to suffer. But we need to strive to gain a kind of state, become a kind of being who can actually benefit all of those types of beings by developing all good qualities and eliminating all faults, gaining the state of perfect, complete enlightenment. We then are able to benefit those suffering sentient beings. And so this kind of thinking requires us to think long term, to have a kind of vast aspiration. And with that kind of aspiration, we should set our motivation, thinking that I am going to listen to the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, in order to train my mind in stages, in order to be able to achieve that state of Buddhahood.
뭐야? 당가 저 것을 랩서도 되려면 봐. 아버지께 야 되라. 야 다 되라. ngapsi timba. 당가 저 텐데 되려고. 텐에 따봐. 텐진 되버려 좀 하셔야 되려. 그던 깨라 텐진 되버려 좀 하려고 고지요 알아. 이 멤버야 번지 현재 때문에 줘봐서 텐데 현다요 그래서 되라. 제보래라 텐지 되려. 어디 봐. 바보다 레다 그거 라마 셔버샤. 근데 릉부다 통고셔야 그다 저하게 말아. 이나 줄에 때네 거 말해 가서 릉불에 때네 통고샤고라. 강바 첨불에 때네 춘주샤 강바 춘주에 때네 강바 첨부샤고라. 릉부다 통고 첨부다 춘주셔도 때네 좀 벼래서라. 그래서 강가 지신 때도 그다 레부게 말아. 릉부다 통고 버리다 소리세. 리파조셔야 돼. 또수 대신에 소리시라. 저디 버리시라. 버를 때는 소리를 때는 버리셔. 리파리다 소리니. 주파리다 소리세야. 네 샤조다 로조 노조세를 직접 때는 샤마도. 샤쇼세지 타지도 개요 말도. 그래서 샤다에는 현다실 때도 샤니 샤쇼리야. 현다실 때도 노브렌로라. 현다실 때는 자렌로고 그다음에 개바실을 마도. 아직도 샤쇼스를 어디에 샤쇼인 게지 요 말. 저 유튜브에서 하나씩 내 제바보다 내다 뭐 하마 셔버서. 제바보 되게 자와데 샤고라. 신소와서 신소하고 이번에 신소스네. 소알로 때되니 신소하고 그러다. 신소하고 저도 신소와서 신제바보 지연에 제제신지연에 제바보. 어때서 지실 때는 샤고. 라와도 주버시고 말해서. 제바보다 내다 그거 라마 셔버서. 어디서 이벤트 해보라. 식세 값수. 로빈 다와 잡아기로 와. 그만 식세. 식세 값수. 싫어 지난 비에서 내다 제바보. 녀랑자다 녀렘바보래. 하대병 거부. 개 강야. 개 강다. 깨체다. 로아보다 따져다. 생기다 세시다. 용어를 자와다. 용어를 제바다. 대신도 양라체 연대체 세마다 셔절라 속에 오버 말루바 되다 Da leda chebabu number chebe. Onyi ji yoba ka de penju tune tuba ni ba shebar chaose. Atanda tama de sawashirarwa. Chebabu da leda ngobo lama shebar chas. I dreba lobin dawa draba tsise kap sungdwa. Oh, shirab chen namji solotu da deba namji. Chebabu da yawa chebabu da le ni di penju tutu de esa. Kumbu langja da lemba bo ni de penju tutu de esa. Kobo shen kanda. Kecha kechi, kecha chi yuebe chane kechi shagurwa. Kechi yuti drebu le to drebu chi kegi yuesa gyu shagurwa. Gyu chi yuete drebu shagurwa. Yudan drebu wa penchi tewa. Drowa da, drowa bo se, drowa se. Drowa bo chi yuesa lamla drowa shagurwa. Lamla drowa yuesa drowa bo shagurwa. Tezo kanga chi shil to ni to. Drowa da drowa bo da. Tacha da tacha. Tacha sene taya yu dira. Yu chi yu be chane tacha chi yu san tawa bo te yung yora. Tawa bo te yu chi li taya yu san tawa bo cha yora. Tenyi da tenshi se. Tenyi se. Tashi sekwa me tenyi se. Tenshi ene ten tenki me tabu se ro. Tenshi se. Tenyi soja to do chi chi li teni tuk yora. Yudan trebu ke marwa. Na shi chungwa da chungwa ri cheba. Kesha kita tama chikwa ri tatan do sara. Yala da yala chen. Yala da yala chen sene. Kumba kamba ri sene yala chen dirwa. Oda kegun chikwa thola soba chashe re 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 te yala rwa. Yala da yala chen. Sene nga zu lu di chashe dirwa. Yala chen dirwa. Yala si kamba lakwa ngola soba tuzu. Chashe tuzu le yala si gora. Yala da yala chen di kudan dribu ke maare te. Yala chi yone yala chen sha gora. Yala chen di yone tela to de ne chashe tuzu yala sha gora. Yala da yala chen tuzu chi shin to ne to gora. Yonde da yonde shen. Tema da shen sha. Yu chi tokcha chi yone. Ne tokchi ki tema sha gora do. Tongge chi yobale tene te shewe sha ne. Jechi chi yosa shewe shel cha se. Teme shewar chawar sha gora. Shecha dan cheshira. Oh, shecha dan. La sobe ngobu malu ba tada cheba bol. Cheba bodan lela cheba penju tutu yiba te shindu shanda mambu che tone truba kyang mambu yore te zonga shen gore. Yudan drebu keche kyang kyang tenshin drebar jiwa ma re sungu dwa. Uta ti nga zo tina shacho locho re sini lela bu dwa. Kusu dwa re che te yine pecho de sharsho yine kira desi sharsho yine nga nopso li te de yora. Nga pacho de le to de chen to de ya cho chi re ra de jo le to de cho sha da ra pacho gyablo de le to de ya nga sha cho le te de gora ko rawa de to be shar cho yo da ko cho ka de na sha de sha ra yin go ra de ge me do no de no ra yin go de ya sha da le to ne chang da lo da de ko ka do sha to to ne to do ma do ha chi do rawa de to be shar de shar cho yin ba chi ra de me do oh teach yeah.
No. So then picking up where we were in the text, then we were on page 57 with this quotation from Nagarjuna, where it says, through the example of action and agent, all remaining things should be understood. So here, when we're talking about dependent arising or dependent designation, specifically with respect to dependent arising, we can talk about sort of cause and result, the sort of results arising from causes, but also this sense of things being mutually established or mutually dependent, contingent, like when we have long and short, or something like a small house and a large house. You can only posit that small house in relation to a large house and so forth. And so these are not causal relationships, but they are ones of mutual dependency, wherein you can only posit something being long in relation to something else, or something being small in relation to something else. And so here, like when we think about directions, it's not as though wherever you are, it's always east right there, or south or north, and so forth. Those are posited in relation to something else. So here, then taking that concept from Nagarjuna's fundamental verses on the middle way, in the commentary on the above lines, the master Chandrakirti's clear words says, so this is his word commentary then to the fundamental verses on the middle way. And he says, in addition to the agent and the action, and the appropriated and the appropriator, the wise should refute, through analyzing action and agent, the essential existence of all composite phenomena, such as the produced and the producer, the going and the goer, the seen and the one who sees, the definition and the definiendum, the arising and the agent of arising, the components and the whole, the quality and the possessor of the qualities, and the valid cognizer and the object validly cognized, and so forth, understanding that they are established only through mutual dependency. So here, just reading that all through, but going back again, when we have something like agent and action, it's not a causal relationship between those two, but it's only in relation to an action that we can posit an agent. So if we're going to posit someone as a woodworker, it's independence upon their work with wood that we can posit that someone is a woodworker, or they're a wood cutter because they're doing this action of cutting wood. And that action of cutting wood is dependent in turn on the one who does that. So these kind of have that establishment of mutual establishment or mutual dependency. So clear words here, Chandrakirti goes through many different examples, and these refute any kind of essence, a sort of like existence through an inherent essence, because of the kind of mutual contingent establishment. So it's based upon there being, for example, as he gives here, something that is produced that we can posit a producer. You can't posit one without the other. And the act of going is dependent upon there being a goer, and so forth. So too with things like seeing, like the seen, the object that is seen, and the one who sees that. Those are only established in mutual dependence, sort of contingent upon one another. And so too, when it comes to the definition and the definiendum, you can give the definition of fire as being hot and burning, but it's only in dependence upon that definiendum, that thing that illustrates that definition, that you can posit those two. And so again, we come back to, these are not causal relationships as in one thing is causing the other, but it is the case that they are mutually dependently established. And so when we have something like here, the arising and the agent of arising, or the components and the whole, like the components and the whole, when you have something that is made up of parts, so you have a house, it's only in dependence upon that sort of whole that we can posit the various parts, and the parts are in turn dependent upon the whole. You've got a house, and then the various parts of that house, the walls and the windows and the doors and so forth, and or like our body and the various parts of the body. That relationship is not one of causality. The house didn't cause the parts of the house and so forth, but they are dependent upon each other. And so when we have, again, continuing through this list, like something that is a quality and then the possessor of that quality, those two are mutually established, or the valid cognizer and the object validly cognized. You have to have an object to be realized to then be able to posit a valid cognition of that. You can't have a valid cognition in the absence of an object, and so forth. So here again, when it says that these, continuing the quotation here, that all of these examples and so forth, understanding that they are established only through mutual dependency. So thereby, the wise should refute this kind of essential existence of all these composite phenomena. And so thus, Chandrakirti gives the many different examples of dependent arisings, both compounded and uncompounded phenomena, whose identities are established established in mutual dependence on one another. So this again is important to recognize that this mutual dependence is not a relationship of causality, but it's one where the positing of one thing is dependent upon the other. So like in relation to you right now, I might be in the west and you are then in the east from me, but something behind me would then be to the other direction, and I would be to the east of them in relation to that. So there's no one east or west. It's independent to something else in relation to something else that we can posit those. And so too with all of these examples that Chandrakirti has given in clear words.
Oh yeah, this one. Well, that and that call. Sure, condition na. Udan debuda kansala soba condition na ko. Shenda chile tu ne dene kurango to kudoa. Shenda chile tu ne mandene kurango ngangarang yus sulchile. Tu mego je kongo reyashi medoa. O ti shegi garwa. Chutamje. Didinde son doa kaso. Nje tu ne truba ni yimbar shebar shao hindi tamade. Ore sheja la soba ngebo maluba. Teda ledan cheba bola number chebe. Ngo nye je yoba kades. Ledan cheba bo shede rang ngo truba yo mare chichilo tu ne mado. Cheba bo chandal tu me kune cheba bo da. Led truya me doa so tina shi. Yo kante chine rang chashe da dakshi da. Chile tu ne ko rang ngo ya truba sha mado. Chile tu me go je koran chanja di re sha se. Shar de shar rang ngo truba shar ine kawa ine shar cho de gurwa. Azu mire si desa ne di sha cho di lo cho di no cho se de. Di tachi tu de gur ti de me doa. O ti inde ko ka se. Ngo nye ji truba me se. Right. Yo tamje ngo nye ji yoba ka de. Ngo nye ji yoba. So yoba. Nga ngara zo samgudwa nga ngara ge yo samsare samgudwa. Ngbu da sem da sorwa da chi long da de zo le te chi de ne ya mi che de samgudwa. Nga ngara ge te samgudwa sambe. Rawa du truba rangwe ne truba sigora. E yo mare so shala te chi de ne. YouTube cha re se. O ti de anga tende ba she ko es cho tamje. Ngo nye ji yoba ka de ngo nye ji yoba. Rangwe ne yoba. Rang ngo yoba. Wa tuk to yoba. Taksu to yoba. Yajuri tano o dire sha se chingo ne trane chi shenda te mo ko ran chi ra ya chi yo ko ti yo marwa. Taksu ba yo mar. Takje che se ga chen ra ya yo marwa. Taksu to tu ba yo mar. Che su to tu ba. Ngo nye yoba. Rangwe ne yoba. Rang shin gi yoba. Rang ngo yoba. Dan dan ba yoba se o tu chi ba yin ba. O tu ta. Che kande chi na. Ya le te chen del. Shakuba mato ngo nye ji rangshin ki kuti bachi me sam. Shio kante chi na ngara zu le pa ta ne ti chi chi re ti ma ma re su le wangi pa shabu mato. Tambu nye ku tsu tu tenge chi wa ma re do. Rangi ngo yu tu bachi. O tende hako ha che kore son re. Ti chi tu na handi.
So whatever phenomena then that we have isn't established as it says here. So the quotation sort of goes in a different order when we translate it, but the wise should refute through analyzing these the essential existence of all composite phenomena. So here, whatever phenomena it isn't established by way of some kind of an essence. It doesn't like we can take cause and result, for example. A cause is only posited in relation to a result because of its ability to bring forth that result, and the result too is only posited because it comes forth from a cause and so forth. They don't exist sort of in and of themselves objectively established by an own nature. So all phenomenon too are established independence upon their parts and independence upon their basis of imputation. And so it's not like, for example, with the the direction east, that there is some sort of essential east that is always east when in any kind of situation, no matter what. And so here, when we come to sort of think about the way that we think we exist, we have this sense of existing in a sense that we're sort of self-existent or autonomously, independently existent. We don't think of ourselves as being dependent upon our various parts or dependent upon sort of breathing and all of the various things that our organs are doing. We don't think of the I as being dependent upon being mentally imputed or mentally labeled. We have this sense that we exist in and of ourselves or from sort of objectively. And so here, this kind of where it talks about essential existence, we should understand that this is synonymous with existence from its own side, sort of in its own right, things having that kind of objective existence, a kind of existence that would be able to bear analysis, such that when you search for the thing designated within its basis of designation, you could find something to point to that is that thing. So these kind of terms like existent from its own side or existent, objectively existent, existent in a way that it's able to bear analysis, ultimately existent. This is what the wise should refute, understanding that all phenomena are in turn dependent and connected or dependently originated, in that they are all phenomena are merely established by imputation through thought and concept. So there, here again, all of these examples establish the kind of mutual dependency of phenomena in that they don't have this kind of essential existence.
오야. 제야 초 탐제 랑게 닥시단 독제라. 뇌내 주베 땡중 임벌 송대에서도 제야 초 탐제 초 간대지나 랑게 닥시서도 닥시서도 않고 당보치 통해 지어와 철시지 남과 동발이야 그 통해 요 말을 매도 니 강발인데 매도 그래서 다야 요 말도 오야 가요 말도 지 구요라 강발에서 통해서는 거대서 통해서는 어다 이 강발에 샤삼 어디 통할 때는 바다기도 와 강배 거다 개고 찍바다 토다 또 닥시래 샤존에 대게 우리지 통해서나 아니 바다기로 와 싱대진의 신기야가도 로마다 지지 차셔럽지 통해서는 어디 감비싱레샤티 지지레샤 바다기도 와 닥시스도 땅보들이야 통해 지어라 강발에 거다 개고 찍바다 차셔르르르 와데 닥시래 그래서 날 때는 날로 될 때는 안 가지고 강바티나 때에 섬선 따기도 와 닥시소래 닥시에서 때라 딱봐 쳐들라 강바에서 딱 쳐들어 닥시다 딱 쳐서래 때라 딱 배쳐대 강바로 와 그래서 소보다 셈 좋아라 소바 류다 셈니마도 요 말아 그래서 요야 돼 소보치다 시바치니도 와 소보다 시베차 조기 봉보다 서로하다 누시다 누시 나버시와 공동아 결을 소바때서 닥시래 와 닥시대 강사대로 와 그다음 미콘도 잡으러 주나 남규대 때도 콘도 잡아도 와세 콘도 남규될 때는 콘도 잡으면 뭐 받아기도 와 미서버 공개르나 코스센션부도 삼 텔레 서버 때는 받아기도 와 소보체부시도 와서 소볼 때는 받아기도 와 이데고 풍부한데 낚시로 왔다. 저기 풍부해서 소보대로 서로 와서 남기는 가서 저와 대화 동에 땅님 때까지 이내 요라. 어디 저 야부도 또군도 좀 소소 거야듯이 야가듯이 거야다 두고 매고야지 남기는 삼대요라. 망쇼데 서로데 요라. 서로데니 다 말들 낚시를 마도 다래요 말아. 네 도시신 데데데 말을 삼루셔지 코데도 어디 야부도 어디 야부 메도삼 이파르데 아마르데 지지르데 켈라르 삼판 두시디 어디네 요데도 어디네 다 말에서 와라 넘버 쉐바 미긴 쉐바 나웨 쉐바 네 쉐바 체 쉐바 그래서 다 말에서 와라 다네 쉐네 예 철파 삼루타 셈바스그라 대왕의 공동아 열어서 봐 내단 염어도 늦지지 풍부시기도 와. 오보제로 셈제 어로체 두시제 때 마행게 상만 늦지지 풍부나 되로래. 늦지지 풍부시나 semba yiji le de semba ta ane te wangi showe kondo nga jela soba nyomo grig mabu yordo o le da nyomo to ma chan tina de dore dochi ji pungbo se zo takshirwa da kanya ro jela te ane das pa tagdo chilo mezo ne sobol te no ti chi re sha tagra ne sosoge soso samsal sobol te ne ga samsa ta samsal ya soso semle te ne 초알 때는 들에 끼우면도 삼사 다야부 총수 삼사 아야부 대부의 기부의 삼사 인질 땐 따르게 걸어와 낚시다 딱쇼에서 어디르다 가서 뭐뭐 담제 라랑게 낚시다 녹제에서는 똑바들스 거라 강배 개구리 거래지 토네 어디 강바레 샤삼파 삼갱게 삼로치도가 똑바 일은 녹제에서 거라 녹제 될니 와라 민다 똑바니 아니에서라 마노에 된다 니 강바르다 니 밀 강바세고다 니 장마세고다 니 쪽제르다 니 메시르다 니 아시르다 니 발란스르다 마노에 된다 카가 민다도와 텔리아 녹제세 녹제들 니리 민다 똑바니 민레레레 따그도와 이미테 ko rawa dutube pumba share chine rawa dutube pumba sangal rawa dutube yin pumba che 상매 pumba se chig yong me do me ya to ko rawa ne tubne pumba se che tube ke yo mara tambo ne ka she te liya pumba sta ka she ming me da ta ngo bu chi li na ming tong da ma mo yong gra la dog che se go ra te nyam do te ri ba re sa lap sha du za ele te segreda se puchen je lab gdwa labsno te yin samsa samlo ko gdwa ele dogje ge mingda tokba ni bedel dogje se gdwa je za che tamje ra ge dakshi ji wares ne dogje ji wares o tele te ne trube inju res kanga dakshi dan dogje pa re ming re ta tokbe de re se che ne dakshi bedra re ru se tel re ta ge war ma do dakshi me ko je kora ra chi 문제 제제 와바도 어송 데스타데 콘트랑가다 온데서 어레 돌레세 안도 롱탕도 네네 지다리 알아 초남라 때네 신대 주에바다르 이신 풍분 남되네 군주 심제 셰초도세 배샤가도 너나를 사지었선 다리 알아 초남라세 어때 니마네 신다스라 신다 콜로스도 이르바 다 등산에는 모자다 남주다 컴퓨터다 뜻을차다 하고도 달라 마부 쇼지요라 그래서 레레레 내가 제게 대서 낚시 전에 니 컴퓨터에 니 남주에 니 모터에 파 다기도 양라 두서 속발 때네 니 신다서 모자서 남주서 전에 가리나 컴퓨터에서 파 명다기 어려서라 이들 양라 소남라 때네 신다르 줘바탈 야라 차셰실 때네 아니 디치레스 발로 따기 와래 차셰도 레레레 레가 셰스나 컴퓨터 레가 치기스 자고래 마도 차셰를 때 마도 이제 디 레가 치고 레가 친게 찍되는 세 요 말에 랑원에 요새 때를 매서데 레가 친게 컴퓨터 디레스 되는 시트에 요 말에 실로데 빠빠요데 나로레 머신 담에다 짠입자 있더라 아다담에 되거라 그래서 강가레레 레가 친게 되는데 레가 친게 될 명파탄이 단디 컴퓨터 레세 멘다샤로와 그래서 다시를 뜨고도 자신 담에다 레가 친게 되줄 때 아니 될 명지 따기 와라 명지 네 남도 레스 파타서 다시디 되나 콜로다 치파과다 나로 때 좀신 담에다 와라 그래서 강가 다시라 대졸 때는 네 남도 레세 남도 페송세 야자냐 치치 레가시 페송세 오라 펜겐 디레세 칠 조조사케 요 마라 강가 레가 뭐 쉬브체네 페르게 와르다 에 때리하다 남도 페송세 따게도 와 야고 때네 딱 봐서래 마도 랑원에 요마 레가 징게데 랑원에 랑원도 두베치 레가시 요 마레스 망보치 dak실라 때 젠델 네 도제게 파타네 And then Namdurin Rosso, Ra, Urso say, Minta Gora, what is one. There Yala saw Namla, then a sing the Chubatars. There Yala saw Walatene, and then dishing that the Namdu race pa Dogji Tanya Chuyo race order. Jubas the Mingi Tanyetera. It is something that Togbe Tanyetera. Tanya Lini or the Try Tanya the Loit, yes. Tanya said, Kaga Hakoya to the Mingda Yora. This is in Namdurita, the Kangbarda, the Shingrida, the Betorida, Kaga Mingda Yora. Oh, dear. She Pumbu Namdene, Kunzu Sumjechi, or Tenashi, Pumbungabula Tene, Pumbungabu Karul Tene, Ashi Pumbungabu Karul Tene, Doji, Mingda Dogbe, De Trashire, De Tendure, Ra, De Tenesos, the me Lamne, Pumbare, Kaware, Kambare, or Tendepa, Dagiore, Tetsamla Shakure Sigora. Tanya Jawangi, Atani, Tetsamla Shakurmado, Tanya Joe. Shidan Dozilla Madu said, Kokona Legacy in the Chipsu, Rawan to Druba, Rangwini Druba, Rangshin Druba, your Maresewa. That's your Kangat and read it. My Inga Kasha Dominici race, Laventy, Chachesna, Chache Shagura. Oh, this Nara. Today, a lot on tennis, the Shimpubunam, then a Kunzu some Jeshe to those. Oh, Kunzub do, Tanya do years, Kunzub do years, there are. Tambariana Penechiglia, Dakshidan Doxil, Mugaja, Koran Dires, Chiran, Zuzu, such a yogora. Yomare, Kunzub do Yovares. Tambario Mares, Tambariana, one echi, Yonat, Tanya Shikora. Kunzub Semja Shechodos, and the Semja said, Umbunga Karuletene, and a day Palade, Tare, Mere, Shistane. Anya Samdupa. You were mother, and number two was so. If you are my cigar, yeah, Tibo the Chiguna.
Mm, mm. So here, furthermore, the Buddha said that all phenomena are dependent arisings established independence on their respective bases of imputation and imputed terms and concepts. So here, it's important to understand this kind of dependent establishment or dependent arising, as in things are dependent upon this process of imputation, that there is a basis of imputation and then the imputing of terms and concepts. So here there has to be the arising, the appearance, the seeing of something that is the basis upon which we then designate something as existing. So if you just have like empty space and there's nothing appearing or arising, you don't label things or impute things. Oh, there's a horse or there's a flower, there's a house or whatever. So there needs to be a kind of basis of designation. That is something that appears, something that we see. And then we have this process of imputing, oh, that's a house, on the basis of seeing this collection of parts that includes like doors and windows and so forth. We then say, oh, there is a house. So you have something that is the basis of imputation, that appearance, that arising, and then the process of designating that thing. So here we, when it comes to the kind of way that we see things, we don't normally kind of acknowledge that we are, like, for example, when it comes to the self, that the I is something that is designated, that is imputed on the basis of these 5 aggregates. So we have the I, which is the thing designated, and the basis of designation or basis of imputation, which basically is our 5 aggregates, our form, and then that which falls into consciousness, things like feeling and our process of discrimination and karmic formations and so forth. And so again, it's based upon seeing an appearance of something. We have to have a basis upon which we then designate. So again, for example, a person, when we designate a person, it could be on the basis of any of those things that are within the aggregates. So if we have someone that's like, they give the appearance of being angry, then we designate, oh, that person is angry. So there's something that's arising, that's appearing. There's something in their appearance or their attitude that causes us to then designate, oh, that person is angry, or oh, that person is practicing patience, or so forth. Oh, that person has a large body. Based upon the kind of appearance of something, we take that as the basis of designation, and then we impute or we designate with terms and concepts onto that. And so this is the way that everything is dependently designated. Again, when we have this collection of aggregates, it can be any one of those aggregates that is the sort of basis for designating the I. For example, it could be our feelings. We think like I feel happy or I feel sad based upon taking that feeling as the basis of designation, or our form as the basis of designation, or discrimination, like when we say, oh, that's this person, or oh, that's my teacher, oh, that's my mother. That sort of is the way in which we are then using that particular, we're taking that as the basis of then imputing in term and concept this idea of I. And so we can do this with any sort of, whether it's our consciousness, discrimination, and among our consciousnesses, our visual or oral, our olfactory, our gustatory, or our tactile consciousness, or our mental consciousness. Whatever sort of is suitable, we can use as the basis of designation. So again, or this could refer to karmic formations. The basis of designation is those 5 aggregates. And then on that basis, we designate like, I am happy, I am sad, and so forth. So here, as it says, again, the Buddha said that all phenomena are dependent arisings, established in dependence on their respective bases of imputation. So again, there needs to be something that arises, that appears to us, on the basis of which we then impute with terms and concepts. So here, when it comes to the sort of conceptual we can have a kind of imputation with concept and with name as well. We give something appears, and then we give the name. Oh, this is a house, or this is a horse, or this is an ox, or this is a plane, or whatever it may be. If it were the case that something existed, phenomena existed kind of autonomously without depending upon that mental imputation, or that imputation through terms and concepts, we wouldn't have like say different terms for a vase or a pot. Everybody, it would all have the same term because it exists like that from its own side. But this is not the way that things work. We designate names we impute them on various bases of designation. And so they then, people, different groups give different names. It's not like we all give the same name to every single object. So when you teach children, you teach them, oh, this is this object, this is that object. And thereby they learn to impute the concept and the term together. So here, when we are examining the way in which things exist in this way, quoting from then a sutra, it says, as it says in Sutra, just as one speaks of a chariot in dependence upon collections of parts, so we use the convention living being in dependence upon the aggregate. So in older times, they would use this example of a chariot, but we can use anything as an example, like cars or planes or computers, and look at how in dependence upon a certain collection of parts, we designate, oh, that is a car, that is a plane, and in dependence upon that collection of parts, those appearing to us, we then impute with terms and concepts. Oh, that plane is flying. Oh, that plane is landing, and so forth. So here, it is dependent, it is in dependence upon a variety of different factors that we give that particular name. But so like, for example, there's a collection of parts, like wheels and the wings and all of the components that make up a plane. And in dependence upon that, we designate, oh, that is a plane. The plane is not its parts. And when we try to search for, like, say we see the plane flying and we say, oh, well, that plane is flying. Well, where is that act of flying. We can't actually find that within that basis of designation. We can't find something that we can point to and say, that is the plane, or this is the act of flying, but rather they're merely dependently designated with terms and concepts on that particular basis that appears, that arises. So here, this is, if there were that kind of so independence upon the aggregates, like someone's form appears to us and we say, oh, that's Tashi, or oh, that's Tundrup, or something, there's the appearance and we say, oh, that's a pillar, oh, that's a house, and so forth, without relying upon that process of imputation or designation. It's not as those things have some kind of autonomous objective existence from their own side. But as they say here in this quotation from the sutra, it is independence upon collections of parts. So we use the convention living being independence upon the aggregates, thus explaining the sort of level of conventional existence. Conventionally speaking, we can say, oh, this is a living being, independence upon their aggregates. But if it were ultimately existent, we would have to be able to find something within that basis of designation that we could point to and say, oh, this is that living being. We can't find anything and point to anything, and thus it is not ultimately existent. But conventionally, we can speak of, for example, a living being independence upon the aggregates.
Oh yeah. that's the she Shingda Rangi Yala Kolola Sokwala Tene Kado Kisro Shingda Rangi Yala Dashi Kolodan Tatina Lo Chashel Tenera. Ane Dogji Tratan Tokwe Tanya Sivara. Shingda Rangi Yala Kolola Sokwala Tenes Dashi. Kado Kis De Shingda Shi Dogji de Che Tratan Tokwe Tanya. 딱배 여바 주바 따라서 때 딱바 잠지로 동치 차셰 마부터 달을 때네 네 대신다래 네 남두레스 딱바 때 잠지 주바래서라 여버세데 딱배 여바 주바 따라서 다시 지나시 가사데 직바래서 소소 아데 다시 풍부 nga라 때네 시고라 풍부라 때네 가사지 딱바 잠지 짱세 Bunga yore, tesu chi tone ne di kashiri, tunduri, tari, simjeri, spatagi yora. Takba tsamji kya kansa yobar, tundubar sun so se. O takba tsamji kya kansa yobar, ta kansa yusu di tsokbar tanda. Namdu tachi tina shinche de, kansa de pumbu ngabu karu chili teni pa lu pa tagi yora, ming tagi yora. O te tsamji ko kansa yore. Yoga shower, that's a gun to Rayake Omare. Chasheda, the Sultan Pachita, or take some Jekotas, Kansa, you do over. And so you something around some around the Trubashibu, some good one, should be Sopo Pasha, Sem Pasha, Swa Pasha, Sem Ring, Swade, Angara Logachi, Rawanchi, some Kogoda, or loss of your Madrese. There's a ten part of what some Kansa used to talk what they say. There's a legacy of the Kansa, legacy, Kanekation, Agaki Shaggy Sigora. So would do it on a do those sha. Agacha shower the matter, Tanga draw up with the Rawachi, Segadron, Yoma, Sigora. Then I talk about some short time, then I talk about some years ago. Talk way walking, then Namda they say. Dashi Chashe Medra Chilitene, or a Maing Chashe Mamuchilitene, the Tagapa, Tagiores, Tokwe then Namdates. Metoda, Chicheka, Yabusheba to the Pataya, Chashe to Zuliten, and so Pupa, Levatasha, you are the Tewangi shower mother. Tokwe Wangi Pa shower, Anya Wangi. Daxila Tene, Anya Wangi Pa Takware, that's some shower. Kotile loss of Ramune Kayomar, 10 year Yomar, that's some bit target charge of a shower, Essigora. Yeah, teach you Nandus. Kansa Yoban Druber so, that's some bit Kansa used to talk what is the Hakokratanda.
So, Here, then, following that quotation, it says, we establish the existence of a chariot through labeling by terms and concepts, saying this is a chariot, independence on the parts of a chariot, the wheels, and so forth. So here, the kind of when we designate something like a chariot, we do so independence upon the various sort of parts, the wheels and the internal kind of workings of that, and we say that is a chariot based upon designating that with term and concept on a particular basis of designation, something that appears to us. It's independence upon that collection of parts that we then designate that thing as a chariot. And that is the extent of its existence. We can't posit some sort of really autonomously, truly existent kind of chariot. And so too, when it comes, the Buddha points out that we likewise establish the existence of a person by merely labeling this is a person, independence on its basis of imputation, the aggregates. And so that is the extent of the existence of a person, that mere dependent existence. So when we have the 5 aggregates and we designate a person on the basis of those aggregates, like we see a form and we say, oh, that's Tashi, well, that is the extent of their existence. If we tried to search for something else that really existed in the way that it appears, we couldn't actually find it. So it is, as it says here, it's that mere labeling, this is a person, in independence on the basis of imputation, that constitutes the existence of a person or of any other kind of phenomena. So we have this sense, though, that this, with respect to all phenomena, and in particular the I or the self, that it exists like somehow independent of the aggregates, as like the one that is in control of the aggregates. If we were to set aside like the form aggregate and the feelings and consciousness and so forth, there would be this I that is somehow like in control of that, or that is the one causing those things to function, or somehow behind all of the sort of actions of the I. But when we really search, we can't find any sort of I that is above and beyond the sort of functions or actions that, and the way that we merely designate that in dependence upon a particular basis of designation. And so too, all phenomena then are merely dependently designated by term and concept. They're not established from their own side. Apart from that basis of designation, when we search for the thing designated within that basis, we can't find it. And thus, again, the sort of extent of existence of phenomena is as mere dependent designations.
Oh yeah. Tēnā chū tamche rāngi chāshē tāng dōgzhē kī tānyā lā tēne rūpē tēnchū yin shēn yé shō tē sōngzā chū tamche rāngi chāshē sam tākshī rōwa tē tsū tāng anī dōgzhē mīng tā tōgbē tānyā lā tēne chūp gu rē sē. Tēnā chū tamche rāngi chāshē tāng dōgzhē kī tānyā lā tēne rūpē tēnchū yin shēn sē tēnchī rēpar chōngā sē tē rōwa. Yudan kien la tenjin rebar shunga re, te kujyo re, dakshi dan chashe la tenjin, dokche la tene, ruba la yan tenjin rebar shunga se, ocho yo ra. Tena cho tamche rangi chashe dan dokche la tene, rube tenjun yin shin se. Teyan di pumba she takbe ten pumba de, tan di pumba re se, di namru re, di kambuta re se, awpa takba yina se go ra. Pumba she takbe ten, ni kambuta dan namdula soba kanyin ba te na se. Te ga chimbe ne sura. Pumba she kanla takbe kyu, takshi, chashe so da. Ta te ga dhona raya ke yo ma re sura, ta de, kadire, kambuta kadire se na. Kurangi chashe lega chinge te sula tene, ni di kambuta re se mingji ta shoro mige. Te tsamgi ko yuzi soar mado, ta tina ne kagir kambuta res ni chigli zugu sa ke yo marwa. Chilo de chini pagwa de zugu de yo ra ti marwa. Ine pagwa kora mado nalo chuje tuzu mena kambuta chagor de chag marwa. Te indi ka sura. Tak soba, che soba, tene nye yo ba chi yo mares, taga cha sha gyure se. lega cheba te computer lega cheba tag lega chawa cheba te shago yore sigora te ne se kube tenjo yin shin se te ya de pumba she tag bete a pumba da kawada kari na namdu da kari na cheba te yin shin se chewa na pumba she tag be yu da she da chega chena ke da sa ke shin da bete le asa da chene pumba nga ma do yo ma to a computer da ne te na lo machine ma bo yira to da namdu tu ne yira 어 대소 그래 악배 교 다시 사실라 사실소다 엘레신 간에 자 pomboate 내가 돈에 되나로 그 다시 차셔도 저저저네 말에 엘레신다지리야 그래서 파샤네 신다지 이거 돼요 말에 근데 전에 라요 말에 시거다 pombo 랑원에 요 바마주자 랑원에 요 말에 pombo 예수네 다 pombo 안에 요 말에 베스나 요 레세 얘네 딱 봤으면 요 레세 하냐 저왕게 샤고 되게 파르파 차셰 도줄에 때네 딱 봤. 대참 비유주 저거래. 다 차셰 도줄 내가 제바데고 다게 내가 제바다로 다게 풍부가고 가로 내가 제바데 다게 자와 제바샤고로 남루다 대주 차셰를 내가 제바데 남루 자와 제바샤고로 자와 챙게치 믹스 현다치 요 말레스 레레네 말에 텔레 현도 요 말레스 대줄에 때네 딱 봤삼라 그 내가 제 대시도 대 침바쳐 왔다. 또왜 딱 점수도 되게 예주 득바쳐 왔다. 예주네 라게 다시 나 때네 도시기 르 디품바시 딱 봤삼지 어때 딱 봤삼지 pombenal 시샵데 야고여서 출로나 추쟁기라 랑질로나 가릴로나 가릴로나 코틴 쟁겨라 내가 지겨라 Zimba soje chawa chini ji pomba yusu sokba yino se namdu rashide chashe to se tezo kanga pa kujore chawa ni mi tange ti tendal yora igi chichide ni ko puruchen ro yora te zambi ko chawa chedan sokba de namdu chawa che se sha ko de mato tele los chawa chenge de kawa do se che ke yo mares rangune yo mares gora tene ta pa samde te jende par soare mambo chele te 차시할 때, 독실 때, 그래서 그네 도움을 시샤시 다가 신바시 유주 쏘바래 시거라. 어디 보듯이 지구나. 쏘바 유주 쏘바 있노서.
No. So, therefore, all phenomena are dependent arisings established in dependence on their parts and the imputation of conventions. So, here again, we have the sort of all phenomena being dependent arisings, not just in the sense of that kind of causal dependency or the relationship between the parts and the whole, that sort of mutual dependency, but also that there is that relation of the thing imputed or the thing designated and the basis of designation. So we designate, oh, this is a vase or this is a plane and this is this is a computer. And that is the extent of the existence of that phenomena. When we then try to search for like, oh, well, where is that computer within its basis of designation? We can't find anything aside from that mere imputation by term and concept. There's nothing that exists from its own side. Like if we look at a computer and we try to say, well, where is that computer within the basis of designation? It's not sort of just the outside, the external casing of the computer. That's not the computer. It's not it's sort of something within it. There are probably thousands of parts inside of that computer, and we can't point to one thing or something that is the computer as it is designated by or imputed by term and concept. But yet we can say that the computer is able to function, that the computer exists. So although it lacks this kind of objective existence from its own side, it's still able to perform functions. So for example, continuing in the text, Moreover, when we search for the object of the label, this is a picture, and ask, well, what is the picture? We do not find anything that is the picture within those parts, such as its bulbous base and so forth, that constitute its cause or its basis of imputation. Nor do we find anything that is the picture anywhere separate from the parts. So here, there's nothing that we can point to aside from that basis of designation. You have something that is designated as a picture, but when you try to search for that thing within the various parts, you can't point to something that exists that is that picture. We have to be sort of satisfied with this level of mere dependently designated existence. However, thus the picture does not exist from its own side. There's no sort of picture that has objective existence. But nonetheless, the manner in which the pitcher, which is able to perform the function of holding water and so forth, is completed is by merely affixing the label, this is a pitcher, with a mind that imputes based on the pitcher's basis of imputation. So here, although it is the case that there is no pitcher that exists objectively, independently of our labeling on a particular basis of designation, oh, that's a pitcher. It's still able to function. That pitcher can hold water or honey or whatever it is, and we're able to pour things from it and so forth. When it comes to any sort of object, like a plane, although we can't point to something within the basis of designation or aside from the basis of designation and say that is the plane, it's still able to function. It's able to fly. We can't look at some sort of part and say that is that thing, but yet that level of existence, which is merely designated, is still able to encompass functionality.
Oh yeah. The tene takwa samdo trube tenjun dene so kondo shebe. Takshida tashela tene dokshi yi takwa samge. Ene yoba shaku rese. Rangwane yoma rese. O tende shechu de song yora. Cheg yora. Didrawe tene takwa samdo trube tenjun dene. Uma tenjuwe lu de temo maimbe. Tenjun joksu shigyan yindes. Uma bas, uma tenjua da uma rangi bas niora. Para sangi se dane, so atendera mateme siniora. Jena neta uma tenjua lu. Jena ani tati josu timu mai bare mado shenda atende autobu yo mare sungora. Jena tongba nyeda dame se atuzulia. Nangbe truda ma su Hara mambuchi shaya yorwa. Tanda de uma tenjua lu chane ta. Hartubati uma tenjua lu di insi yordo. Oh, yedawe tene takba samdu trube tenjun di nese. Uma tenjua lu di timu mayimbe tenjun joksu shigyan yinde ese. Dawa drakbe shigyaben dreba lese. Loben dawa drakba ke. Chadu shata ke dreba yorwa o tinar son shaa se ure. Dreba le. Shigyaben dreba le. Kande sondo sena. Kumbala sokba nam. Rangi gyule tingi da shendo namba nge. Cheba chena yoba mayi meje se. Kumba da namdu la sokba, kansa la sokba, kari yina chö kanga chikba ra. Kumba la sokba nam rangi gyule se rangi dakshi dili sigo di gyudi. Gyudan drebu nyegi gyuge sigo mara. Rangi dakshi le sigo ra. Tingi da shendo namba nge chena yoba mayi she se. Dakshi kansa rabchine dakshi pumbu nga le. Ene pumbu nga bu kawru da chik tuwa yo mara. Rangwa trube chik tuwa me, rangwa trube shen tuwa me rwa. O, ti namba nge chena se. Ti tawri wo lamne dhimar. Yule tingi da shen tu. Namba nge chena yoba mayi me ke se. Tata na yang se. Namba nge se chidwa ho ti shingda rangyen la le shen tu me, shen mi mayi tenden yang me, yang la me, yang la da de me, duba tsam me, yi me chi shen no se ori ta di mara. Ta dun she ya chi da, ta nga she ya chi ni yo ra. O, tanda di na ka se. Pungmi, pungbu le shen me, tela pungmi terde me, 디신시바 풍대메 디신시바 관심에서 싸시를 값서 상해 권에 제바전에 소라. 그만 주바 값서 대가는 니 더밖에 없네. 다 되게 제반자라. 풍미에서 공부다 찍도 요 말해서 풍미 풍부를 때 셴베 라마메 주게요 말해서 풍미 풍부를 셴베. 엘라 풍미에서 아들 풍부 때 셴베 주기 때문에 요 말해서 와라. 공부를 다 대신배 주기 때문에 요 말해서 연락 보면은 이신시바 풍대면서 네 공부를 내배 주기요 말해서 거라 산제를 자네서 와가지고 산제의 심자란다 생카리네 라문에 주베 동바데 찍어라 다체도 라문에 주 다충도 라문에 마주인데 말을 쇼강게 내수 찍어라 소설이 자나 소설이 자나 보면서 풍미 풍부레시메 풍부 랑원의 주베 다시요나 풍부면에 강루치 인구를 티요 말와 풍부가부 가야 다 랑원의 주베 다 말해서 와라 풍미세 풍부가블에 대신베 다시요를 베스네 대요 말와 풍미 풍부레시메스 엘라 풍미세 아들 시체 엘레 안에 풍부데 셴베 수기 때니 요르베서 간주 잘라르 조런데 저스디 땡셰 저스가로 포바 샤셔도 아유 샤셔라 때 셴베 수기 땜버와 일레트체 타바체라 디간데 싱도리 루샤요나 타바텔리아 싱도 셴베 수기 때요라 어디네 셰체 풍미 풍부레 셴메 엘라 풍미에서도 아데 땡서체 텔리아 풍부디 아땡체 때요 말에서 와라 에르데 메시아 풍부디 땡시체 엘라 다데 땡셴베 수기 투테네요 말에서 와라 풍미 풍부레 셴메 엘라 풍미 다들라 풍부 땡셴베 템베 수기요 말에 에르데 메 풍부리아 다 땡셴베 수기 때네요 말에서 풍미 풍부레 셴메 엘라 풍미 때데메 이신식바 풍데메 가사 라니 라니 풍부란 덴베 수기 여봐야 말해서라 덴바들은 덴수니 요라 뭐 집엔 덴바다 뭐 타데벤 덴바시니 요라 제나 난덴스 셰민 송데나스라 제나 난덴스데 아사들이야 아슈단 덴바레 아단 덴바레 팔라단 덴바레 세라 올 모다단 덴바레 세라 남두단 덴바레 강바단 덴바레 강바 여바레 덴바시고라 근데 생긴 덴베술레 요 말에서 거라 집에 덴베술게 요 말에 가서라 수단 덴에서 나시 속부단 덴에서도 가서라 집에 수기 덴발시고라 라문에 집에 수기 덴나 야나 덴센도 덴야나 집에 수기 덴고를 텐데 가 말에서 탕하시기도 탕에 제바체네 따데 다 삼을 땅게르시네 텐데 삼당고요도 소소데 소소 풍부 소기 풍부를 nga 삼사 삼을 따 nga 랑웨도 트바데 라와치 요바 남주 삼을 코르데 삼을 따 nga 라와치 요나 아니 요왕기 바 샤바자 멤버스 라와치 요나 네테 가르에서 풍부나리 요르베스 수마르 소마르 세레레 삼을 따 멤버 삼을 따 오라 풍미에서 풍부를 때 셴바예요 말했어. 그래서 엘라 풍미에서 다들 나로도 봤을 때 풍부디 치료 받때 되면 셴데요 말했어. 엘라 풍미 에르데메 야나 풍부를 다들 셴수 때문에 수기요 말했어. 야나 풍부를 다 오집에 수기 덴베 수기요 말했어. 오집에 수기 타데 수기 덴베요 타데스나 아단 덴바르 팔라단 덴바르 강바단 덴바르 모다 덴바르 세 모치바스나 에진 소푸단 덴바르 세르 어딘데 라와치 덴바요 마르스 어딘데 탕알 자기도 자시르까 마 주바카스 니 토바샤라 싱다 라엘라레 셴데미 싱달 찬소라 셰미마이 덴데야메시 야라라미 야라다더메 드바자메 이메스 야라 초바데 근데 야라 주루루 제베데 신다 말해서 실로게 입대 신다 말해서 남도 하시는 남도 차셔 간가 초초한테 말해서 실로게 입대 남도 말해서 어때 잘하다 다 되지니 그래서 나와 잡아 엄마 집에 가서 다 되는지 쳐봐자 어떤다 도바 연에 입대 맨도 삼사 근데 도바 연게 저리 입대 말해서 바꿔요라 어때 실럽나 뭐도쳐
Mm. So,
상가데 질럽에네 다 되는데나 니 터바 겨라티 랍된
네.
거라
So this way of positing dependent arising as mere dependent imputation is unique to the system of the Prasangika Madhyamikas. So here, this kind of understanding of dependent arising, that is really the dependence of this dependence between the basis of dependent, the a dependency between the imputation with terms and concepts and the basis of imputation. This is unique to the Prasangika Madhyamikas. We have among the Madhyamikas, the Prasangikas and the Svatantrikas. But here, when we get into the various philosophical schools, although they might all sort of espouse an idea of impermanence or selflessness and so forth, they have different kinds of understandings of selflessness. And so we need to be aware of that. So here, the master Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanzas by Aryadeva states, a pitcher and so forth are not found to exist on application of the fivefold analysis to determine whether they are one with their cause, i.e. their basis of imputation, or other than their basis of imputation. Nonetheless, as dependent imputation, they are capable of such functions as holding and dispensing honey, water, milk, and so forth. So here, getting back to this idea of this fivefold analysis, whatever kind of phenomena it is, whether it's like a pitcher or a plane or a person, if we take, for example, a person, and this sort of fivefold analysis is described in the fundamental verses on the middle way by Nagarjuna, where he says that the Tathagata is neither identical to nor different from the aggregates. The Tathagata is not in the aggregates, nor the aggregates in him. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. So what is the Tathagata? So here we can the sort of if there were some kind of self or I that existed autonomously, independently from its own side in the way that it appears to us, then it would have to exist in one of these five ways as being like identical with the aggregates or different from the aggregates, as somehow kind of having this relationship of being supported, like the Tathagata, or again, we can apply this like to our own self. We are all equal. It's not like some sort of higher beings don't exist inherently or do exist inherently. There's no difference between different levels of beings. We are all equal in that we don't have this kind of existence from our own side. And so whether we're referring to, like it does in these verses on the fundamental verses of the middle way, refer to the Tathagata, or whether we apply this to our own self and we are looking at it in that way, they're both equally non-existent in any of these ways. So when we sort of have this, the Tathagata is not in the aggregates, we can have a relationship between this sort of thing that is supported and the support for that. And that is not a relationship that the aggregates and the self have, nor is there kind of a relationship of, so we don't have the self existing in the aggregates somehow, as though we're supported by the aggregates, or the aggregates being supported by the self. There's not either of those relationships, nor does the self possess the aggregates. And here we can get into the idea of possession of something where the possession is of a different nature, as in like, oh, I have a cow, or I have an ox, or I have a car. something that is of a different nature, or the kind of possession that is of the same nature as seeing like, oh, a person has form and so forth. Neither of those relationships are the kind of relationship between the thing designated and the basis of designation, in this case, the self and the aggregates. And so here, when we are going through this kind of fivefold analysis, it would again be referring to the self and the aggregates, or any sort of basis of thing imputed and its basis of imputation existing as identical, different, totally different, having this relationship of being support and supported, either of those ways, or this kind of relationship of possession. And so then, in addition to that, we need to think about this in relation to ourselves again. So when we have this sense of I, we have a sense of an I like existing in a way that it is not dependent upon anything else, sort of existing autonomously. And then we search for that. Does that self exist sort of identical with the aggregates or separate from the aggregates, and so forth? Go through these different kinds of relationships. And when it comes to then, as was mentioned, the sevenfold. So there's a fivefold kind of analysis, as is described in Nagarjuna's Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way. And Chandrakirti, in his own entry to the Middle Way, describes two additional kinds of relationships that would be the kind of thinking that the I exists as the mere collection of the aggregates, or the basis, the thing designated is merely the collection upon which it is designated, or that it is the sort of shape or configuration of the basis of designation. And those two are then refuted in that sevenfold kind of analysis by Chandrakirti.
Oh yeah. 100
Just-
Bala soba nam rangi dakshida tingi da shenye namba ngam namba tunji ko ne pa tsegi ne nye yo mare she yo ba ma yime ki ragi mare yo mare she se de na da na ya se ne de se tse na ni ju me na ya se ora tene tak ba rangji da tene tak ba samdo ne ko be na le rangji lu ba da karen tre she ne ko cha che tup ka ji sha gore Banal chulu transit jibe pumba sero transit jibe pumba me jibe pumba se kolega chibi ware sore chawa chen de bade sha go re se wor ta tunda anga da ta tun gi chen ra yo mare wa imena chashe de zo chawa che bal tene le pha chawa che ba ta ba sam ji le ga che bade sha go re se chu pha su ki to gu ne che chala sha chu de to ina se da lu chou yo do namdu rabshine tagana stina min do chode lega chi pirgi yore ma babgi yore kanga chawa che ba sha tu kure se yora raji da chu zimba da chu ala soba chu asini chu chu se chu le ya tende se ora chu ala soba chawa ronwar jo wa de chi ngwa ba me sawa sha o tipe ngo charo re se de ma tenjo ga tawa she du sarwa angada 타트윈이 제바체네라고 말이야. 내 처셰도 자와 제발 때네 남도 자와 제바 공배 자와 제바 매 자와 제바 미기 자와 제바 가가 샤투 그래 대참래 자와 샤투 버디 내 뭐서 쳔보레서 오마 태교하게 대주를 치레 송거도 내가 말해서 가지 오면서와 시감 시송바 따로서 어디 되시려셔나
No. So here, continuing in this kind of this quotation on the commentary, from the commentary on the 400 stanzas, it says, again, a picture and so forth are not found to exist on application of the fivefold analysis or sevenfold analysis to determine whether they are one with their cause, as in their basis of imputation, or other than their basis of imputation. So they can't be found upon investigation, whether we use this fivefold analysis or sevenfold analysis. We can't find them as being one with or different from their basis of imputation and so forth. Yet, nonetheless, Nonetheless, as dependent imputations, they are capable of such functions as holding and dispensing water, honey, milk, and so forth. So yet, even though when we can't find something that exists from its own side other than what has been designated by imputation, we can still observe that things are functional. They are able to, for example, we designate, oh, that is a pitcher, and that pitcher is able to hold water or dispense water or honey or milk or whatever it may be. And so this here, this explaining of the Prasangika Madhyamaka view shows us that even though when you investigate, try to analyze and find the thing designated within the basis of designation and can't find that thing, you can still posit all functionality. Things are still able to function. And so as he says, how amazing is this?
Oh yeah. I don't know this. Benal transit lue chawache te samare. Razu namdu droya samruton da hakodwa. Namdu naga chashe mambo chig laga chigora. Ne mitige samruton pasu koya te chawache godwa. Ne chilo pagba da susu te sa ne de changara zu ni ku de chogodwa. Ina ko rawa do chane senge chig yo mar te su kanga ge lega chane shibu chile to shin delne. Ne kontro de godwa. Chawache godwa. या पाप की वारे सालमा पाप की वारे या फूट की वारे मीका का फासु के की वारे आते याम से बुशिदा रे सब की वारा ओती शात हो गरे टेंशन रे बर जो आसमले चावाती शात हो गरे रे पुनगे केंगे दिन दे रे से चिल जो जो सके यो मारवा इन नमदु चावा छे रे से शा हो रे ते समले या नमदु फुरसो नमदु तेसो नमदु के जो से अकांग शा हो ये नाशे Asa Pumbuga Karu Legacy to Doada, Tebada, Oada, Kawada, Tubada, Samba Sambu Chamba, Niji Kebal Sobakaga, what the Shakur Mato Chengachi, Rawa, Chigio Mares, Mambuchilla Tursin Delnico, Chawachina, Chawachi, Tubiores, Chawachi, Shatu. Chiribada to the Mambuchi, Ramune Mana, Chawachi, Mares, Egora. Rawa to Tubachi Kor, Chawachin Gichi, Zoto says Kormato. Tutu se chi me kanga to chene chene chawa che ba sha thu mare sam ge wara cha che rong ge mare so rang ne me na tu se che rang ne yo ko re te ge de bu ya che rang ne ke ba che me na chawa che thu mare se ga to ho te de mare se ten chen de ba re jo a shi da cha she la ten che do she la ten ne o te ni te sam le sha ne chawa che thu ba de sha thu ge wara so ma te yo lo la What is a yam sembo rese? Yam sembo sudu tua del seguo marta. Ya del seguo da what's our answer is there. What did you love to
So here again, in this manner, dependently arisen phenomena are free from. Sorry. So here again, describing this, it's not just like a pitcher and being able to say hold honey or something like that. We could use the example of a plane and flying. Like when we are in a plane, we can speak about the plane is flying, the plane is landing. You're able to sit on that plane, to sleep on that plane, whatever it may be. But when you try to search for the thing that is designated, plane, independence upon that basis of designation, all of those various parts and so forth, there's no one thing that you can point to as being, oh, that is the plane that is flying and so forth. But yet, independence upon all those causes and conditions, independence upon our mental imputation, we can say, oh, the plane is flying, the plane is landing, and there is complete functionality within that. But yet, we can't say point to something that is within the basis of designation and sort of posit that as existing from its own side. So here, when it comes to the Prasangika Madhyamaka view, one can still posit functionality within the context of there not being some kind of intrinsic or objective existence. So we can still posit things like developing love and compassion, the functioning of various various things is still perfectly tenable within that view. Whereas for some non-Buddhists, as well as for some lower Buddhist schools, without having something to point to, without having some kind of objective existence to be able to say, oh, that is that thing that objectively exists from its own side, for them, you wouldn't be able to have functionality in the absence of that. So they would see it as contradictory that if there is no such sort of objective existence or existence from the side of the object, then you can't posit there being functionality. Whereas here for the kind of Prasangika Madhyamaka view, it's actually because even in the absence of having something that you could point to within the basis of designation, all is able to be posited as merely dependently designated and function within that. So here, when it's sort of like, how amazing is this? This is a more positive connotation, not sort of like how strange. It's a very positive kind of connotation.
오야 다때나 시간저 현달에 자초르노 컴퓨터를 소바테 주시도 잠베 텐데 망보지 소네 알아서 밀레 라와 자치야르도와 텐데 망보지 소르도 코텐데 요토게 와라 내가 강가 지기도 왔더니 깨지 뒤에도 지지 가려서 강가래 접 강가 쳐도도 때지 레버 좀 텐데 간데시 망아지 소이 나고 그저 냠도에 내가 쳐도게 와라 그래서 강가 못사로 시리스 와라 어야 텐데 봐셔 때나 텐종게 쳐 아예 봐 그래서 뭐가 되지 때나 텐종게 쳐 강에 봐 되다네 랑외네 섬 랑와도 두베 동바인베세 이제 레버저 쳐 강에 봐 되저게 자와치야 돼 자와 제바보데 랑와도 두바치 랑외네 두바치 요 말에세 망보제 초시 대단 될네네 이제 자와치야지 샤고르마도 랑와체네 자와친게 찍수 딱서바 랑외네 랑신기 랑게 모여서 자와친게 디레스 찍수 땡요 말와 대수사 땡진 레버를 중에 수기 자와치기 와라 옛날 땡종게 쳐 강에 반대다니 랑외네 섬 랑와도 주베 동바인베 딱베 타다 자와다스 타니다 제외 의세디 샤고라 메타와셔디 타니다 제외 의세기 와라 딱타스도 랑외네 주바텔레 딱타샤기 와라 랑와도 주바치요다니 그 일단 딱바 주고 요르도 텔리아 딱타세 뭐라 오메테지오 룰이야 뭐 랑와도 주바치요나 랑외네 주바 랑게 고메 주바치요나 딱베 타르타와스 요마 랑외네 주바 요마와 일레 롱바이나 딱타라 송아시그라 노르르다 딱타다 저와셔와 랑외네 예베 동바를 자치 네베스다 랑외네 주베 동바 자와 쟁게데 랑와도 주베 지요 말에 마보지 초진 델네 레가 지요래 이 자와 제베 샤고 그래 자지 네베 샤고라 네 새끼도 메타당도 남도 포르게도 컴퓨터도 레가 지기도 모터도 좀 드네 레가 지기도 때진 레바 저 좀도 자와 제베데 샤고 그래 시고라 자와 쟁게 랑와시 매나야 때진 레바 주베 수지 자와 제베데 샤고 그래 그 마셔네 체달 혼도라 봐봐 알아서 랑외네 예배 오야 자치 네베 체버메 주스 랑원도 두바지 매나 내가 쟁게 랑원에 두반데레세 지 라에 매나 우주세치 매나 일단 매거래기로 와서 자와 제토고 말해서 말에 자와 제토고 레세 이제 레바를 좋아서도 자와 제토고 와레세 체바 말에서 매바 말에서 자와 쟁게데 매바 체다스나 미어바데 매바 따스나 체다스 오라 체바 매바 딱타스도 매바지 여바 라와시 딱바히게 라와시 여바 따와이나 딱타스 오라 그래서 딱세게 탕이데 저게 의식도 오메 따와들라 라와도 주바 가지고 삼바나시에 요 말에 라와도 주바 자와 쟁게지 매나다 매르베스네 자와 쟁게 체바에 말이 요래 이제 레바를 좋아하면 자와 집에 샤고 그래 시고라 마태지오 룰라 또 신다에는 랑원에 주변에 저저 샤토고 말아. 뭐 tenjo lule tende mare. 샤토고 레세. 이제 레버리 좋아가 또 맛이 어디 이게 어디 놓았대요. 야. yana tenchung ke che kanyi ba dida ne rangwe ne sam rawa do rube tongba yinbe takbe tata che se ra. Rawa do rube tongba songza, rawa do rube yinne takta la long do re. Rangwe ne rube tawa tele takta la long se ra. Meba chi yoba tak yo ra. Rangwe ne yobe tongba ra chachi nebe chebar men yuwa se. Rawa do rube chawa chenge de rangwe ne tongba yinna ya. Shenda kanga tenji dene lega chetubu yore, chawa chetubu yore. Tesunda cheba mare, meva mare, chawa chetubu shaku yore. Cheba ni mengi yore. Rangi dakshi la tene, doche ge takba tsamla yobar jo niban dise. Rangi dakshi chashe mambu kora mainge chashe sam dakshi mambu la tene. Doche ge trata tokbe tanya ge mingri ri tani, chawa chinge mingri ri tani shakba te tsamge. Ni chö de da de chawa chenge de yoba sha togu yo re se gora. Dakshi la tene, dokshi ge takba, samla yoba ra jo nyoba de se. O te samge yoba sha togu yo, oma tenyo lu la. Ngo mawa tsuyo na, dakshi la tene, dokshi ge takba samge yo togu ma, rangu ne chi yo gora, rangu ne rangshin ki chi chawa chenge chi yo gora ma do, ni meba sha ro re. Oma tenyo lu la tende ma re se. Inika sha togu re se gora. Chabra menjua rangi dakshi la tene, dokshi ge takba tsamla yobar jo niban di, yobe es, oma yo lola di yobe. Dene dakshi ge tanyi dan trewe, ume lam yinbar sung shis. Ode dakshi ge tanyi dan trewe, oma tenjua ge, kawan jo su de dakshi ge tanyi dan trewe, ume lam re se sogar. Yana, tenju mayinbe chö gaya yoba mayinbe, tenjin debara jo mayinbe chö yo mare. Wa mayinbe. Rangwene yobe tongba danse. Rangwene yobe tongba mayinbe chön gaya yoba mayin ose. Tenje debari jowa mayinbe chön gaya yo mare. Te sonda rangwene yobe tongba mayinbe chön gaya yoba mare se. Te tashi nala song sha se. Tashi long changi ora. Di tashi long di nyamdo tanshane digaro. Tenje debari jowa kanse. Chashe ta dakshi mambu chi la tenje, dokshi ki tanya la tenne, tetan drelne, ni chö di pa sha ku yora. Tenje debra zhuwa ga, tenne tongba ngiru she, tele rangwene trube chö che yuwa yuwa ma, rangwene tongba re. Aresa kurang chashe mambu dhamma mambu kurang mayingi mambu chi, dokshi ki tanya, teso gen tesul pa mingchi ta sha ra. Tenjin debra zhuwa ga, tenne tongba ngi, tele rangwene trube chi yuwa yuwa ma re. Rangwene trube chi yuwa na, kurang mayingi chashe la teshin del ko ma re. Rangwene trube chi yuwa na, loy wangi pa sha ko ma re. Kurang nga de yin se, me rangwene trube chi yuwa yina, me singe chi rangwene trube yuwa yina. Gambuli kanga me se chikpa kwa re, chikpa yung me doa. Ming midra tagi doa. Tesun de ko, hanyen ki wangi sha kwa de yung yo ma re. Tenjin debra zhuwa ga, tenne rangwene tongpa re se wara. Ni tenne tawa na mewa ribes na mewa ma res. Dakshi dan chashe medra wa te zul tenne, dokshi ke tanya ke di res pa ming ta su na. Te tsamla shaa kore yoba. Kunzo di lega cheba di chashen di lega cheba di shaa ku yore. Ni tenne dagba des. Ni ume lam ye nos. O di keshambura di na su tanda di ni abu shikdwa. Tenzin debran zhuwa ka sonza. Dakshi dan dokshi la tenzin drel ne. Ani dungobu di pa shaagi yora. Di shaagi yotan rawan tu truba yunga yo mare. Rawan ne truba yona. Hanya ji wangi shaagu mare. Kuna wangi tsu yo shora. Chashe dan tuzul togu mare. 요새 파샤나 코라라 랑게토가 정강가라 예스 샨다 ndawake고 막가와 봉번나시 에 가가래서라 때제 레벨을 중앙하가세 얘네 동반이도 셔왔더라 라원데 두바 요요 말에 라원데 동바래 예버래 라원데 동바 마이나 시 차셔라 때제 당예게 왕게 샤고데 과 말에 당예게 왕게 샤고 마인바 코랑 요거 다시 차셔라 때 먹어제 데레서 코라 주요거라 이어 말에 대소다 이제 레벨 좋아이나 다 랑원에 주베 동반 니레 티셔버려서라 아나 매버서네 매버에 도와서네 랑원도 주베 내가 챙겨지 메도아 주고는 라에 메도아 매네다 매버서네 때네 다바데 인요메라이나 다시 차셔 메도 내가 챙겨 들을 때네 도저기 타니게 떡에 봤다네 예참 여 콘조레레 자와치바데 코 자와치바 샤바다 때 여바 샤고레세 얘네 다고 잠을 여바 샤고레세 얘네 다고라 자와네 자치 롱게 여자 체바면 요아레 이제 레바 좋아가 때네 동반 예도 셨더니 때네 다고바데 때니 오메람이 노스 우마스 딱저게 타니다 저게 와 체바 롱네 되요마 레좀 되다 자와치바데 샤토 마레 akwa longba ina nganzo thwa ne she rawang du truba ta rawang du truba ta rawang du truba nye rawang du truba chakbe yu rawang du truba aye yu rawang du truba tinde samta na ane shenja da chak da da khong du da nga je de tezu de de yora tezu me ba so to yo ma re o ti du ye sonja kanje tenju ma yin be chen ga yo ba ma yin ba a tenje de ba jo ma yin be che kan yo ma re rang ne truba yo ma 이제 동바 많이 배춘가 요바 많이 넣었어. 이제 레버를 좋아해나 낚시단 도질라 땡지 엘레 때네 대단 렐네 중고 바시나 라와도 주바데 용고 마 라원에 줘 용마 레스거라. 이제 동바 많이 배춘가 요바 많이 넣었어. 어야. 이 가서 가지 땡주 많이 배춘가 요바 많이 봐. 이제 동바 많이 배춘가 요바 많이 넣어. 어디 나와시럽 용장도 와. 어디 지랍나. 맞아.
In this manner, dependently arisen phenomena are free of the extreme of permanence because they are devoid of independent existence or existence from their own side. So here, this kind of view of the middle way that is propounded by the Prasangika Madhyamaka school is free from these two extremes, from the kind of extreme of a kind of like a permanence or the extreme of annihilation, wherein you sort of denigrate the extent to which phenomena actually do exist. Sorry. So here, then again, like when we look at these dependently originated phenomena, things like computers and so forth that exist, and the independence upon an aggregation of many collections and conditions, we can see that like they're able to function. We can actually kind of imagine these sorts of marvelous functions that computers are able to do these days, but they don't have a kind of existence in their own right from their own side, but rather it is only due to being dependently originated phenomena that they are that allows for functionality. And such a view then is free from the two extremes. So dependently arisen phenomena are free of the extreme of permanence because they are devoid of independent existence or existence from their own side. So again, the middle way is this kind of path that is free from the extremes of some kind of like mistaken understanding, like the idea that phenomena have some kind of autonomous existence that is objective from their own side. And so here, although phenomena don't have any kind of independent existence from their own side. Though lacking any objective existence, they are not completely non-existent because they are capable of functioning. So even though there isn't some kind of inherent or independent existence of phenomena, we can still say like fire burns and planes fly, and these things are functional actually because they don't have any kind of inherent existence. If they were inherently existent, according to this system, they would not have any sort of functionality whatsoever. You couldn't speak of there being any kind of functionality. So though lacking any objective existence, they are not completely non-existent because they are capable of functioning. And one can posit that they exist as mere designations imputed by terms and concepts in dependence on their bases of imputation. So here, again, the kind of nihilist view, the falling into that sort of extreme of annihilation would be to denigrate the actual existence of things, to sort of undermine the way in which they do exist, like karma and so forth. And so the middle way, free from these extremes, is said to be this kind of understanding of existence as merely designated existence, imputation by terms and concepts, independence upon their bases of imputation. So this is said to be the middle way, or the middle path, free of the two extremes of permanence and annihilation. Therefore, since all phenomena are dependent arisings, they lack existence from their own side. So there isn't a single phenomena that is not a dependent arising, and therefore all phenomena lack that kind of objective existence or existence from their own side. So here again, this is then backed up by this quotation from the Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way by Nagarjuna, where it says, "Whatever is dependently arisen, that is explained to be emptiness." So whatever is dependently arisen, as in it isn't existent from its own side with this kind of inherent existence, but rather is existent only in dependence upon imputing, mental imputation, giving a name. There's no sort of autonomous or independent existence from its own side. That is explained to be emptiness, and that being a dependent imputation is itself the middle way. So here, again, if it were the case that things were not merely imputed by terms and concepts, but had some kind of objective existence from their own side, then it would be the case that like everyone would call fire fire because that's how it exists. But we can see that that's not the way that it is. There are different names, different labels that are given in dependence upon those various things. But yet it's not that things are non-existent. They exist in a manner of being dependent imputations. So here, these verses from the Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way are a really good summation of this incredibly important point, that nothing has that kind of autonomous sort of self-existence, self-sufficiency from existence from its own side. If it exists, if phenomena existed in that way, independent of our imputation with terms and concepts, then the Prasangika Madhyamakas would assert that there would be no functionality. One would fall into this extreme of permanence, whereby you couldn't have any sort of functioning existence. And then on the other hand, if you're to negate any sort of existence whatsoever, even their merely dependent existence, you would fall into that extreme of annihilation, where you deprecate those things that do exist, that merely dependently designated existence. So here, if you fall into the extreme, finishing this quotation, something that is not dependently arisen, such a thing does not exist. Therefore, a non-empty thing does not exist. So here, if one were to say, that there like many of the lower philosophical schools, that there must be some kind of autonomous or intrinsic existence from the side of the object, then that would mean that those things couldn't sort of change. We couldn't increase or decrease those sorts of qualities because they wouldn't be dependent origination. So here again, there's nothing that is not dependently designated in the sense of being dependent upon imputation through term and concept on a particular basis of designation. So there's nothing whatsoever that is not dependently arisen in that way. And therefore, Nagarjuna says, a non-empty thing does not exist.
Oh yeah. And do long jang do. Do le chang se san je do na le song sha se. And there is no jigdan je tanya je wang ge yin je. Dan ban ne mai no se. Shir je je de kap song yo do. Bom ge ne kap so ra. Yang jigdan je tanya je wang ge yin je do dan ban mai no. Chö du zu kang ga ye dan de. Cha she la te ne. Ne le pa ta ne de chi chi yin se. Jigdan ge tanya pa ta yo ro te. Tanya ge wang ge yo ba re te sam ge yo ba sha go re se. Imba sha go re se go ra. Jigdan ge tanya ge wang ge yin je. Dan ban ne mai no. Dan ba tru ba ten ba tru ba. Yo rang wen ne tru ba. Rang tu tru ba chi yo ma re se. Tanya ge wang ge sha ba re. Lo tanya da trai tanya ni ba. O te ge den da shi. Cha she. Eso lo aya ro ma bu chil te ne. Ne pa ming ji ta yo re. O te wang ge sha ba ti tam ji yo ba sha go re se. Jigdan ge tanya ge wang ge yin je. Tanya ge wang ge sha ba ma yin be yu chi yo na ne tong tam ba yo ba re. Tanya ge wang ge sha me go ba yu ko rang go ne. Rang du tru ba. Wa. Dog chi le te me go ba. Tak shi le te me go ba. Ko rang go ne. Tak se ba che se ba chi zu zu se chi yo na. Ne tong tam ba yo ba re. Rang go ne yo ba re. Rang shin ki yo ba re. Rang ge ngo yo ba re. Shan le te shin tel ne yo ba ma re. Rang ge ngo yo ba re wa. O ten de yo ma re sin jik den je tanya ge wang ge sha ba re se. Tak shi men ra ma bu le te ne. Jik den je ming re re ta ge re. Te wang ge sha ba te sam ge yo ba sha go re se. Te wang ge sha ba ma yin be yu ko rang go ne yo ba chi yo na. Ne tong tam ba yo ba re se. Tong tam ba yo ba ma yin no shi da. Shi ge ben re ba le jang se. To ben da wa tra ba shi ge ben re ba na le. Ye chi re. Oh yes. Shi ge ben re ba le jang ro wa. Ye chi re kang da to ba yo ba ko ne yo ba ni da si do. Oh shi cha kang da shi kang da yo ba te. To be wang ge sha gwa re se. To ba gen ji den ge te ne cha she le te ne. To ba pa tanya shi ta yo re. Te wang ge yo ba sha ba re se wa ra. Tanya ji wang ge yo ba re. Kang da to ba yo ba ko ne yo ba ni da shi cha yo ma yo se de. To be wang ge sha gwa te le yo ba sha go re ba to rang ne yo ma yo ta yo ma re song go ra. To ba me ba yo ba ni me ba te da ne se. To be wang ge ta she le te ne da shi le te ne. To be pa ming ta ba. Tanya ta ba te wang ge yo ba shi re ma do si go ra. To be wang ge to ba yo ba ko ne yo ba ni da shi ra. To ba me ba yo ba ni me ba. To be wang ge sha ba ma yin ba yo ba shi yo ma re se. To ba me ba yo ba ni ma yin ba te da ne kor ma cha ba re se. Ke zum me ba si go ra kor ma cha ba. Ke zum me ba. Kor ma cha ba re. Tak ba lan dog be tak be ki da. Tak ba ta da ra ba te de che ne chi nam shi ni ma sa ra ba re te de na ne tu tu du sam che. Ji ba chi go ra. Rang ne tu tu ji du sam ji ba chi go ra. Yo ma re de ko tu na wa ge go ra. O te so tak ba dog ba la tak be tu ta ra. Rang ge ngo ma tu ba nge so. Bara zo tong de tak ba ta ta te de lia. Ta ra ba re te de tu tu du sam che. 유응원의 진도 삼직고 시시 지그도 근데 딱반 도발라 딱be 주다 랑경을 마주방에서 랑경을 주바지요 말해서 와라. 아니 요한 그 파샤고 말아. 실성보다 최탐제 라마도 주바 마인바라 랑게 차셔다 역시 도시를 되네 주베 인중인바 소소사다 최컨디션이야. 최탐제 라마도 주바메 랑원에 주바메 랑경을 주바메 난담바 주바메 마인바 랑게 차셔메 라마인베 랑게 차셔메 라메다다 도시게 타녀 라다 도베 타녀를 때네 주바샤고 레스 주베 인중 레스 아셰다 도시를 때네 주베 텐데 인중인바 주보 시야 어디실라나
음. So it is independence upon various kind of parts that on the particular basis of designation that we then designate with terms and concepts the existence of various things. So everything exists by the power of the world's conventions, not by ultimate existence. So here to elaborate on this, it then explains that sorry, so ultimately when we talk about something existing ultimately or being truly existent, this would refer to that being objectively existent from its own side without depending upon the designation through conventions, through concepts, but rather as opposed to that that kind of autonomous or independent existence. Everything exists only through the power of the world's conventions. It's existent merely through the power of designation or through the power of imputation. So for something to have a kind of existence that is not dependent upon designating terms, that is not dependent upon its basis of designation or those designating terms, would then be to have existence from its own side, a kind of objective existence. And that is something that everything is lacking. So here, continuing in this, Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanzas by Aryadeva then states, therefore, everything exists only by conceptuality and cannot exist without it. So without that kind of labeling, mental imputation or imputation through terms and concepts, again, we give various labels or names to things, we designate them with words, but there's also the kind of imputation with concept. If there were some kind of thing that existed apart from that, not dependent upon that, it would be ultimately existent. It would be truly existent. But there is nothing that exists in that way. Without a doubt, everything lacks essential existence, just as a snake imputed on a coiled rope. So whatever it is, whatever phenomenon we're talking about, it only exists by way of imputation through terms and concepts. To exist like from its own side without giving something a name or labeling it, that is not the kind of existence that anything has. And we can liken this, we can use the example of like when you have the right kind of conditions, there's a rope and it's like a striped rope and it's coiled up and the weather or the lighting is just kind of right. You see that and you think snake and you give rise to fear and all the rest of that, even though there is no such snake existent in that basis of designation. Due to the process of designating it, we impute, oh, that's a snake, and everything arises from that. So here, thus, no phenomena exists independently. There's nothing that exists from its own side, independent of the process of this mental labeling, but rather all phenomena are established as arising in dependence on their parts, on their bases of imputation, and on imputed terms and concepts. So whatever phenomena exists, it exists in a way that doesn't have this kind of ultimate autonomous existence from its own side without being dependent upon the kind of basis of imputation as well as the imputed terms and concepts.
올려 angā chūndhīrā, tēnchīn dhēbarī chūngā māwā sēdhirā. Tā tēndhīrī sūtā māwā liyā, gāshīgī chū kāngā tēnchīn dhēbarī chūngā rē sēnū, gāshīgī tēnchīn dhēbarī chūngā mā rē sērā, tēndhīn dhēbarī dhāmī dhā yungu wārā, tēnchī kōr shēgī wārā. Tēnchīn dhēbarī chūngā māwā sē, kēliñ kēntī sū wārā. Sāngyē chūtā māwā nāmnē sū nāngbā sāngyē chūm dēndēgī, jinchūgī chūtā māwā shī yungu wārā. Tē chirā māwā tān dōdē bā tān, semchān bā umā bā chūtā māwā shī yungu wā. Sāngyē chūtā māwā nāmnē, nū chūgī ngō bōn dē nām sē, nū jīn jīg tēn ngā rāntsū tē sāgān zāmbū līndē sī wārā. Chūgī semchān sā nē tēlā, lōng chōng gēng gēng jīg kāngsā tā tū lā, chūgī jīg tēn sī wārā, nū jīn jīg tēn tā chūgī jīg tēn yī wārā. Nū chūgī jīg tēn yī ngō bō dē nām sī wārā, rā rāng kī chūtān kēng yīn dē bā tsam lā tēn chīn dē bā rā chōngā māwā yīn lā sī. Nāmbā sāngyē bē chūtā māwā shībū tē shikā kī nū chūgī jīg tēn dē kāngā tē sī wārā, nū jīn jīg tēn ngā tsū tē sā zāmbū līn tē tā, chūgī semchān mītā tēn rūlā sōkpa tē sū sāmā sī wārā. Nū chūgī jīg tēn yī ngō bō dē nām rāng kī chūtān kēng yīn dē bā tsam lā tēn chīn dē bā rā chōngā māwā yīn lā sī. Chūtān kēng mē tā lūn chāng bā rā chāng dē kā shīng dō chī na, chūtān kēng nyē lēng kī chūtān kēng chī chī kēng lā tēn nē, nē pā tēn chīn dē bā rā chōngā rē sī kē līng kī wā rā. Tī nā shī, mā nē tā chū kī jī tēn kāndē chī nā, tēn chīn dē bā rā chōngā rē sī, tī kē līng kī rē sī rā, nāmbā sāngyē bē chūtā māwā sāmā kī. Sāngyē bē chūtā māwā nām tēn nē chū kī jī tēn dē nām, nē chū kī jī tēn yī ngō bōn dē nām, rāng kī chūtā kēng dē bā tsam kī sī, dē tāndā khurā ngū sūm tō tāndā rūp chī nē, nyē lēn tān lēn chī chī kēng tsā nē kō, sō kō tuwa, kē kō tuwa, tē tsam lā tēn nē, ngō rē mā tō. Tēn chī tēng kī chē bā pō lā sō bā, shiān tā tāk bā, chē bā pō tēn rē rūp chī kī tsū, chē shā bā tēn rē mā rē sī wā rā. Rā rū ngū sūm tōng dā yā kī chūtā kēng tē tsū lā tēn nē, kō chūng dā kī wā rā wā, tēn rē mā wā rē sī. Chūtā kēng dē bā tsam lā, ngū sū tō tōng wā kēng dē bā tsam lā, tēn chēn dē bā rā chōngā mā wā yēn lā sī. Shiān chōmbā sāngyē chōm tēn tē mā pē kōng kī, kā pā pā pē yō lī yā chūtā mā wā mā bū yō rā, tē tsū kī tēn rē kē līng mā rē sī. Shiān tē nām nē tēn chēn dē bā rā chōngā mā wā mā yī nō sī. Mā tsū tā lī yā shiā sā rī mbā, tēn chēn dē bā rā chōngā sī tē. Yō wā mē bē tēn lā tēn nē chōngā, mē tā bā tū mē kēn lā tēn nē chōngā, nē bē kēn lā tēn nē chōngā sī. Chūtān chē bā lā tēn nē chōngā sī, tā bō mē bē kēn lā chōngā, kēn sūm tā kēn ngā lē chōngā shiā sōngā, tā lū chāng bē dō kāp sō, kēn sūm tā kēn ngā lē chōngā. Tē kēn sūm tā kēn ngā lē chōngā, tēn chēn dē bā rā chōngā, tē nāng bā tsō kē lē mā tō, rī bā tsō tē kē lē kī wā mā rā. Kēn sūm tā kēn ngā lē chōngā, tēn tē mā wā tē mā yīn sī wā rā. Yō wā mē bē kēn lā tēn nē chōngā sī, tī mbā, jī tēn chē bā bō lā sō bā tēn tē yō wā. Mē tā bā tū mē kēn lā tēn nē chōngā sī, mē tā bā kēn tū mā tsō nē kē wā rā. Nē bē kēn lā, tē mū mā yīn bē chū tā kēn lā tēn nē kē wā rā sī. Tūm tē tē mbā, ngā shā tū sā nē tā bō mē bē kēn lā tēn nē chōngā sī rā. Chū tā chē bā lā tēn nē chōngā sī rā. Tē chī lā nā tē wā chē nē.
So then, turning to this next section, the proponents of dependent arising. So, whereas proponents of Buddhist tenets assert that all composite things, both animate and inanimate, arise in dependence on merely their respective causes and conditions, the proponents of non-Buddhist tenets do not assert such dependent arising. So here again, there are those that assert this idea of dependent arising and those that don't. Generally, all Buddhists accept the idea of dependent arising, accept this concept. So the various tenet schools, the four Buddhist tenet schools, the Vaibhashikas, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatran, and the Madhyamakas, all accept that the environment, so the sort of inanimate, the world, the container kind of world, and those beings who are contained within it, all of the various types of beings, from humans and animals and hell beings, all of those are dependent arisings, that all composite things come from causes and conditions. So here, though there are those who propound dependent arising, and non-Buddhist tenet holders do not assert such a dependent arising. And we see how they have various different assertions. And here again, the Rice Seedling Sutra elaborates or sort of gives a description of how it is that dependent arising is characterized by these sorts of different characteristics of the cause. We could talk about sort of the three or the five, but here, this is really something that we can see for ourselves directly, that things arise in dependence upon an aggregation of causes and conditions. One needs to have a kind of substantial cause, as well as the coordinating conditions to bring about a various or a particular result. And so here, again, there are those that would assert that there's some kind of deity or a creator being or something like that. But here, the kind of dependent arising that is accepted by Buddhist schools is characterized by that there is production from a cause that is not a divine creator's thoughts, and two, that they assert production from multiple impermanent causes. You can't have permanent causes, and nothing arises from just one single cause. And then you need to have, thirdly, production from a cause that has the capacity to give rise to the effect. So there needs to be something that has the ability, the power to actually generate that particular effect, the substantial cause, as well as the kind of coordinating conditions. Now, those are the sort of three defining characteristics of dependent arising. But if we add two more, it's that those causes need to be selfless, not sort of established in their own right, or sort of have that kind of establishment, and causes that exist. We can't have something that arises from non-existent causes. So here we will continue with this, but Buddhist tenet holders assert and accept this idea of dependent arising that is characterized by either those three or those five sort of characteristics of the causes.
哦呀，当然说，就做啥啊？
So we'll stop there for today as we are out of time.
哎呀，
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the secret path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispel the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna
那
Mandala
那个那把呀，
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you, Ginla. Thank you very much.
哦呀，
Thank you, Katrina.
哦呀， 哦呀。
Bye-bye. Reminder for people online, next week is our last teaching in this series. and to support the Abbey to keep making such teachings available online. Have a look in the chat box for how to donate. Also, Geshe Topke will be giving teachings on the Diamond Cutter Sutra, sponsored by the Jewel Heart Learning Center in Ann Arbor. Those will be every Tuesday and Friday evening in April from 7 to 9 Eastern Time. And again, the link is in the chat box. We'll see you next Thursday morning.
Recording.